Hi there again. This is Clifford Bates, and welcome again to our next session of reading Machiavelli's Prince. Today we are going to be doing chapter 18. The title is In What Mode Princes Ought to Keep Faith, right? Chapter 18 is starting from 15, which gave us the virtues. This is the question of the virtues and vices, the things that by which princes are to be praised and blamed, right? So chapters 15, 16, which we did on the question of liberality, and last chapter was cruelty and pity. 17, now 18, we deal with faithfulness, and what mode that the prince is to faith. Now, this chapter has 6 paragraphs. It's one paragraph shorter than that, but in many ways, it's one paragraph shorter, but than the previous chapter. So, and it deals with the question of how do you keep your faith. Now, let's do with this. Again, we're using Leopold de Alvarez's translation. The link to where it can be to the publisher is below. Let's turn to the first paragraph. How praiseworthy is it? Sorry, my dyslexia hits it when it's again. How praiseworthy it is for a prince to maintain faith and to live by integrity and not by cunning, comma. Everyone understands, semicolon. Nevertheless, one sees by experience, comma, in our times, comma, that those princes who have done great things have taken little account of faith, comma. They have also known with great cunning how to go around the brains of men, semicolon. And in the end, they have surpassed those who have founded themselves on loyalty, period. Now, this paragraph is one sentence. It is divided into two. It has two. Let me see. The semicolon begins at everyone understands, comma. That's the first break. The second break occurs where he goes the brains of men, and the third is the period. Okay, so therefore, in other words, however praiseworthy it is for a prince to maintain faith and to live by integrity and not by cunning, everyone understands. So everyone understands that it's better that people live by faith and to live by integrity, not by cunning. Now, cunning. The tension here is this tension between integrity and cunning. Faithfulness and integrity is opposed by cunning. Okay, cunning is deviousness. It's not only calculation, and therefore we'll get to the metaphor that he will use soon. But it says that everyone knows this. But then what? Nevertheless, what? One sees by enterprises of our time, those princes who have done great things have taken little account of faith, and have known and have also known with cunning how to go around the brains of men. So therefore, getting around men's brains, how do you? This cunning is not. It seems to be able to understand and go beyond. He uses the word go round the brains of men. Okay, how men understand stuff. The brain of the men is with our brain we understand, but we also see, right? Our brains will see the world. We perceive the world. We experience the world. And then we make our judgments of the world. So it applies not only how we are perceived and understood, but how the judgments of men, how they're evil. In other words, they're able to cunning deceive men. That's what the implication is. And the last part is, in the end, they surpass those who have founded themselves on loyalty. So therefore, these cunning minds now he says that these people in his own time, right? This is that the princes in our own time, those princes have done great things, have taken well account of faith, and have known how to go around the cunning men, and that they have done better. They have founded themselves on loyalty. They have surpassed those who have founded on loyalty, on faithfulness to others. What is loyalty? Loyalty is that faithfulness, a form of faithfulness. So this ends this whole sentence, this whole complex structure, gives us the introduction to the question of faithfulness, and is opposed to its opposite of cunning. Faithfulness is a combination of loyalty and integrity, right? Of faithfulness. Faithfulness seems to be a kind of integrity, and maintaining faith, right? Maintaining faith and living in integrity. Integrity implies you keep your word. Okay, you promises you made, you deliver. In other words, there's this integrity and faithfulness are interconnected. Cunning is almost the antithesis of faithfulness, integrity in that sense. Now, the next paragraph. What's so interesting here is the you that he introduces this is the courteous one. It's the formal. In other words, the courteous second person is used. Second person, the courteous version of here. Therefore, it's not personal. You ought to know, that there are two kinds of fighting. The one with laws, and the other with force. So, before we had, in chapter, all the way in chapter 12, we had the discussion of good laws and good arms, right? Here we have two types of fightings. The fighting, two types of fighting. Fightings through laws and fighting through force. Now, here's the problem. What are laws? Laws are reasons with force behind them, right? Law is justice. It's our perception of what we think is just. Law is the community's perception, the authoritative opinion of the society, the state, about what is right and what should be done. Okay? This is law. Law is the authoritative opinion with what, but not only the opinion, it is opinion backed with force. So law by its very nature has force. But now, there's a difference. Now, we have to distinguish. Machiavelli speaks here only of fighting of two kinds, of law and of force. But law is also, we have to understand that law's embodiment is a kind of combination of two things. But law itself, what is the law in that sense? The law is words. It's statutes, it's principles, it's written down, it's norms or beliefs that we hold. They're beliefs, they're held assumptions and beliefs are understandings of what we should do or what should be done, but also what the instructions in obedience is. And there's another, he mentions that the third a way of fighting not mentioned is by words. Machiavelli here gives us instead, by comparing law with force, he seems to suggest that law does not have force. These are opposites, but they're not really opposites. Where persuasion and force are the natural opposite. Machiavelli does not present an opposite of persuasion versus force. He gives us here at the second paragraph in chapter 18 between law and force. Two types of fighting. He doesn't see that fighting with persuasion is fighting. In other words, of fighting. What is meant by fighting here? Fighting means that there has to be a victor. But persuasion and discourse can be one of, winning and achieving dominance or seeing things here. So, he seems to suggest that the two types of fighting, one of laws and one of force, right? In the second sentence, he'll continue with this point, is that the first one is proper to man, and the second proper to beasts, semicolon. So the first is proper to man, semicolon. The second proper to beasts, semicolon. But because the first proves many times to be insufficient, one needs must resort to the second. Okay, but wait a minute. Law has force in it. It's a threat of force. It's not mere force. So this is why this is a weird thing what he does here. He's basically kind of implying that law is without force, but that doesn't make sense. In many ways, laws are, and also we have to remember the previous point of that arms and good laws back in chapter 12. When chapter 12 he gives us this famous discussion that he's not going to talk about good laws, he's going to talk about arms, because he says that to have good arms one has to have good laws, and that if you don't have good arms, good laws without good arms are meaningless, don't work, they can't survive. So in other words, one cannot exist without the other, and they're interdependent. So therefore, instead of talking about laws, he'll only talk about arms, right? So therefore, and what are arms? The arms are the instruments to be able to get what you want. These are the instruments of force, right? So therefore, there's something interesting here, that law cannot be separated. The chapter 12 account, law cannot be separated from force in any way. Cannot be separated. It is reason, deliberation, plus force. It's justice, deliberating about justice and what should be done, how it should be done, with the sword behind it. Saying if it's not done, if it's broken, we will use force to enforce, make you do it. Right? So law by its very nature has force, but Machiavelli presents here that it doesn't. That's why, in many ways, there's a kind of deception going on at one level. He implies that what happens, that one is for beast, you don't have to reason with beast. In other words, we assume that law means reasoning a little bit. There's almost a perception of, in fact, the classical world would understand law as kind of reasoning. That law is a kind of rationale, a product of man's judgment and speech, logos, and his reasoning, speech and logos, reasoning, produce the law. Okay, so therefore Machiavelli here seems to relegate law to mere reasoning in the presentation in 18. To mere word, to mere logos. Now, this is, in the beginning was the word, right? John 1, right? And again, that's, and this chapter is about keeping faith, right? In the beginning was the word. This is how should a prince keep faith? And laws are not enough, he says here. Why? Because what happens is that second paragraph, he goes, one needs must resort to the second, because the first proves laws, first prove to be insufficient, and the one needs must resort to the second. So therefore, even though laws are relevant to man and force to beasts, because law is insufficient, in other words, persuasion is insufficient. I think, in other words, honestly, it's I would agree, everyone would agree, persuasion is not enough to convince evil men to to obey the law. So therefore, coercion is necessary. Okay, we agree on this. Aristotle and the classics would agree. But Machiavelli switches it in a way to kind of present this as that, okay, instead of, it's not about reasoning, persuasion, it's now law itself. That's reduced to mere persuasion. It's a law without force. And force is the opposite. It's opposing member. So this is a very interesting, Machiavelli's up to something. This is a kind of a three-card Monty trick here, to make it appear he's being far more radical than perhaps he is. The next sentence after this, he goes, therefore, again, second paragraph, therefore it is necessary the prince to know well how to use the beast and the man. All of a sudden, okay, a prince needs to know the beast and the man. He said first, laws deal with men, and force deals with beasts. In other words, let's go back to the previous sentence. Two types of fighting, one with laws, one with force. The second sentence, the first one is proper to man, the second is proper to beast. So therefore, it's the fighting with beasts which deal with the mere force, and the fighting with men that deals with laws. But the problem is that one is not necessary. In other words, one is not necessarily the step, and it requires the use of the beast. Okay, of the force. Force is necessary. Law is not sufficient. Force is more required. Therefore, the metaphor of the image between what is fitting for men and what is fitting for beasts. Now Machiavelli switches it and saying that man must know how to use both the beast and the man. Now, he's kind of using a metaphor here: the beast and the man. The man, human being, is the man. The beast, the animal, the beast, something. The beast. The prince must know how to use the beast and the man. Okay, now let's stop. Let's read that next part. This part has been taught covertly. This part has been covertly taught to princes by the ancient writers, who wrote that Achilles and many other ancient princes were given to the care of the centaur, Chiron, the centaur, so that he might look after them under his discipline. Now, this is D'Alver's footnote 2. This is on page 110. Chiron taught riding, hunting, healing, and music. He has also been said to have taught Aeschylus, the art of healing, right? See Iliad, book 11, lines 832. Or Pindar, the Numia, book 3, or book, the third book or the third chapter. I don't know which is. I remember Pindar, but it's the Numia, the third section in verses, or the section line 53 onwards. And just goes again. Look at Plutarch's Moralia, line in the text 1145, line E. The marking numbers in this. They're not. I think they're Stephanos numbers in Plutarch. 1149, following Plato's Stephanos numbers. Stephanos numbers are the addition that was done in the very early Renaissance, late medieval, which numbered the books both from Plato and Plutarch and a couple other writers, and that are not based on book and chapters. It's from the beginning of the work to the end, they're line numbers, and it's divided A, B, C, D. Column A, column B, column C, column D, and then it's divided like this. The text so therefore, this is checking to go see there to Plutarch. So the example to understand Chiron, the centaur, what he did, his role. Now he talks about the two sources, the Iliad, Homer's Iliad, and Pindar's Numia. But then he then refers to Plutarch, who addresses it also in the Moralia. I wish I had the Moralia. I don't have a good edition. Plutarch is one of these great writers that we should pay more attention to. The lives. It's a shame that no new translator has done a unified translation of all the lives of Plato. The last one did it was Dryden. Because right now you have to rely on different translations, so it's kind of annoying in that sense. So you can't do the comparison that you should be able to do of the different lives in Plutarch. But to stop here, we have to continue what we left, the beast. He gives his example. The ancients taught secretly that the prince needed to be taught by the beast, because he's taught by a beast. He's taught by a centaur, who's half man and half beast, right? So therefore, he's taught to be both man and beast. Okay? In other words, centaur teaches the prince, the young Achilles, and all other ancient princes about needing to be both a beast and man, and balancing the two. Okay, that's the hint that Machiavelli is suggesting here. The next sentence starts, to say this is simply to wish to say that one has to have as a preceptor, one who is half beast and half man. That is that is needful for a prince to know how to use the one and the other nature, and that the one without the other is not durable. Okay. The beast and the man. He's saying that the person, the preceptor, the one who was before, who instructed or taught or guided the prince, has to have had a preceptor who is both. He says to say that a preceptor who is half beast and half man. And that is a metaphor for saying that a prince, it is needful for the prince to know how to use the one and the other nature, how to use the nature of what is fitting for man and what is fitting for animals. When is it, in other words, when is to know what is human versus what is not, what is the level of the beast, to know the man versus the beast. And he's saying that you cannot know one without the other. Now, the knowing one without the other is interesting because that's the whole point about the law, right? Law without force is meaningless. It's powerless. It's pointless. It falls apart. In other words, that one without the other is not durable. That's the nature of law. Law without force is not durable. Okay? So it's not... Now here's the other problem. What happens with force without law? See, this is the thing. The beast without law. Now, he's both man and beast. He's not taught just by beast. So maybe there is an implication here that the use of the Machiavelli is giving us a hint here. It's a very subtle hint about using the example of Chiron and Achilles the Chiron. He's not, in other words, he's not taught just by mere beast. He's taught by both half man and half beast. And he's saying that you need to know both, not just one. And that the preceptor must be both half man and half beast, not holy beast or holy man. So, because one without the other is not durable. That's how it ends. This leads us to our third paragraph. Since a prince must of necessity know well how to use the beast, he ought of the beast pick the fox and the lion, for the lion cannot defend himself from snares, and the fox cannot defend themselves from wolves, period. Now, D'Alvarez has a footnote here, and I think it's useful of the natures of lion and foxes. Again, see Cicero Diophaces, Book 1, Chapter 13, or Section 13 of Diophaces, the offices. If I had my copy, I I would probably should have do it. Moment. Okay, now I just quickly looked at it. Fox. It's in book 1 of the Theophanes or Offices on section 41, 42, and 43. I'll just read it kind of thing. This is Cicero's discussion of, as he says, the section starting 41 is called the way of the fox and the way of the lion. He goes, it is enough, this is Cicero, not Machiavelli. Theophanes, he says, enough has been said about the actions appropriate to martial affairs. Additionally, we must remember to observe justice even towards the meanest of people. The meanest conditions and fortunes is of the meanest condition and the fortune is that of the slave. Period. Consequently, such people do not advise badly who orders us to use them like mercenaries. Make them work, but give them their just due. Period. Next paragraph. Moreover, injury occurs in one of two ways, either by force or by fraud. Okay, force and fraud, right? He says fraud seems like the way of the fox, force by the way of the lion. So fraud forces by lion, foxes by fraud. Both are exceedingly foreign to human beings, but fraud is worthy of the greatest hatred. Finally, there is no a sort of injustice worthier of capital punishment than those who not only commit it, but are so deceptive that they seem to be good men. Enough has been said about justice, he ends that. And the next line of lion, hold on, lion is actually more interesting from that. I'm sorry to doing things. He goes, this is a couple, this is at 49, a couple things down, just above, no, 50, no, sorry, 50. At 50, line 51st, section 50, starting in, again, book 1, he says, but human association and unity will best be preserved if the most kindness is bestowed upon those whom we are closest. And he continues this, and he goes, and he continues. It seems we must revisit more thoroughly the natural beginnings of community and human association. The first bond distinguishes the association of entire human race. This bond is reason and language, which, through teaching, learning, and communication, debating and judging, reconciles human beings with one another. Uniting them is a sort of natural association. In no other way are we further removed from nature of wild creatures. We often say they have courage, such as found in horses and lions, but we never say they have justice, equity, or integrity, for they lack reason and language. Now, I brought Cicero here to understand what Machiavelli is up to here. Machiavelli is confronting Cicero, completely confronting Cicero here. Is taking complete aim. And Theophanes, in many ways, is a kind of mirror of princes like the prince. Theophanes in the Renaissance time is looked at. It is the book for the Republic. It's Cicero writing to his son. He's teaching them about what is the virtues necessary for a good citizen, a free person, a citizen. Because the Republic is dead, Caesar destroyed it, and hopes that, and he can't rely on the Republic to educate his son. He's now educating his son, and this is the idea of the mirror of princes, of education, right? Machiavelli is taking aim at, because Cicero will be very important in this time at Renaissance, that Machiavelli's writing for the Republican writers. Cicero will very much be moving a kind of rebirth of Republican conceptions of government against monarchical, and that Machiavelli is taking direct aim at Cicero. And this is done because why? Because the problem here is he's trying to suggest that, you need to know both. In other words, he's playing this idea. And he says that you need to pick the fox or the lion, right? Two beasts. Again, this is the two beasts. The beast he talks that we need to talk. We have to know the beast and what beast you pay, lion and the fox. Cicero seems to say, no, human beings should never be the beast. And in fact, the fox is the worst. Because why? He is the most corrupting, and the fox is the one that is the cunning, and fraud is worse than force in that sense. And therefore the beast of lion is the force and cunning. Now this is the interesting thing. So what is the problem? Lions cannot defend themselves from snares. In other words, traps. In other words, the force, the lion and those who... The lion, what does the lion symbolize? Lion symbolizes courage, faithfulness, integrity. Go back. And the fox, the cunning, dissipulous, faithless. So therefore, this is a very interesting moment here in this sense. And who needs, in other words, and the fox cannot defend himself against wolves. Interesting. The wolves, the dog. What are these? These are wild dogs, right? The wild dogs. They're not really dogs, but they're the wild animals, right? Wolves are not. Dogs are not wolves. They may have came from them, but they've become totally civilized. I mean, domesticated, right? So he goes now. The next sentence. This is the second sentence, I think, of this. Yes, he says second sentence of the third paragraph. He says, one needs them to be fox to know snares, and lion to terrify wolves. Remember the high and the low before, back in the beginning of about the two prestiges of the high and the low. In order to be the prince, the prince is on high and the people the low, and therefore to be a prince, you have to know the people, and the people to know the prince, right? Here, to know snares, you have to be what? A fox. To know wolf, to escape snares, you have to be the fox. To escape traps and things like that. In other words, snares are traps, right? So to avoid traps. What are traps? The traps here are the things that can derail your plan, or in other words, a political statesman, a craftsman is trying to make choices for their success and benefit. Traps are things that look beneficial but are not. Things that appear beneficial but aren't really not. Things that may appear useful or safe, but they're not. Okay, and therefore you have to have the mind, the cunning to see how someone would try to deceive you. Use a thief to catch a thief. You need the thief. Now the wolves. Remember the fox, although cunning, he is powerless. He cannot fight the wolves. What a lion can. You need the lion to hunt, to scare off the wolf, terrify the wolves. Fear. Okay, right? So therefore, one needs both the lion. A prince needs to know how to be both lion and fox. Know how to deceive, but also know how to create fear on those who threaten you and can be dangerous to you. In other words, the next sentence. Those who rely simply on the lion do not understand this. Period. Okay, this is the thing. In other words, the lion is, again, the symbol of the lion. Remember, Machiavelli gives us a kind of bestiality. Not bestiality and, naughty stuff, but a bestiality of different types of beasts. And he presents us first of all, the half man and half beast, the Chiron, right? The centaur. And then who is horse and man, right? But then we have a half man, half horse. We have man, and then we have the lion and the fox. Okay, and these are the animal types of beasts are symbolism of two things. Human symbolizes by law. Half man, half beast. He's also a god. He's divine in that Chiron is a divine creature. He's one of the immortals and the divine creatures in remember in Hesiod. This half beast, therefore, you have these a divine creature and the human, the odd ends, and then between them is the beasts. The beasts are not human, but they're not divine either. So the divine, the human, and the beast is the ordering of things, right? That's the hierarchy of logos. But Machiavelli gives us rather the pairing of beast and man. That he is both this and that. Chiron is half of these. So that the opposition is between man and beast. And of beast, there's two types of beasts. There is the cunning, the deceptive cunning, and then there is the brave and mighty and faithful. Okay? So therefore, that's the interesting to this. And he says that those prudent lord, in other words, that those who rely on the lion do not understand this. Now the preposition is that those who rely wholly on forced. Two. Now people misunderstood this. Lion we think means faithfulness, but also relying on mere force. This could be at stake too, because the lion is about force, as much as it is about faithfulness and integrity. So therefore, the double play here. There's in this use of the symbol. There's many things going on, and Machiavelli is using the symbol different ways to confuse unthoughtful people. The prince is not really meant to be a handbook that anyone can apply it. Machiavelli wants to he's basically constantly testing you, not just at the end chapters, but in that if your mind is smart enough to merit what he's going to teach you. So therefore, this is a kind of a confrontation. Machiavelli confronts you to see if you're smart enough here, because he's not being completely obvious. He's making you understand the metaphor, and he's doing the metaphor because he's not being direct. Because as much as we're back to the problem of the law, right? Law and force. So therefore, this is what? That the one who relies wholly on force won't be able to do. In other words, the ones who rely on force don't always succeed. Therefore, you need to be what? You need to rely on. If you're going to be, in other words, you need to know how to be both lion and fox, right? That's the thing about this. A prudent lord, therefore, cannot nor ought to be. Okay. This continues next sentence, right? A prudent lord, therefore, prudent lord, therefore, cannot, nor ought to be, observe faith, when such observance turns against him and the cause which made him give his promise, turn against him, and the cause which made him give his promise are extinguished. So it's a very complicated sentence in Italian, and he's done this purposely in the sense. We're following the Italian and the logic of the Italian to get the gist of this. Why? In other words, we cannot simply rely. In other words, a prudent lord cannot, therefore cannot, nor ought he, observe faith, particularly when such observant harms him, again turns against him, and that the reason or the cause which made him give his promise, right, are no longer the case. They're extinguished. Next sentence. And if all men were good, this precept would not be good, semicolon. But since they are wicked, and would not be faithful to you, you also do not have to be faithful to them. Now, the you here is the second person familiar you. Okay. He switched the U on here. He begins the beginning thing of you is courteous. Now he switches the U. It's now, in other words, this repeated. If all men were good, this precept would not be good. Semicolon. But since they are wicked, comma, and would not be faithful to you, my good, this is the courteous you, not courteous you, the familiar you, like, hey buddy, someone you're intimate with, your intimate buddy, we're only someone intimate with you who use this. This particular usage of the you, second person here. It's the familiar. Okay, so what is he doing? You also do not have to be faithful to them, because they're not going to be faithful to you. You don't have to be faithful to them. Let's continue. Nor does a prince ever lack legitimate cause to color his inobservance. Period. In other words, there's always, a prince always has legitimate causes to color, means mask, or to just, kind of, the color, this expression, color his inobservance. The inobservance is the question of faithfulness. Your promise, keeping your promises, keeping your word, being faithful. In other words, there's always reasons that you can color your faithfulness, your compliance, your obedience, your willingness to keep your word, keep your promises, keep your things. In other words, you have to always look at this. A prince never lack, nor does a prince ever lack legitimate causes to color his. In other words, legitimate, not illegitimate, legitimate. And he's saying that it's not. In other words, the argument was always it's okay to kind of change it when you have legitimate, but that's rare. No, he's saying it's the opposite. It's not rare. The legitimate causes to kind of to color or to kind of back away. In fact, this is the word color. Even the expression to color your observance. It's a very polite. It's a kind of a deceptive meaning by that. What does it mean that? It means to how do you frame? How do you present or display your faithfulness? Okay, how do you present it to others? Now, next sentence. Of this, one could give infinite modern examples and show how many peace treaties and how many promises have been of no effect and made in vain by the infidelity of princes, and those who have known best how to use the fox have turned out best. So he says, of modern examples, there are infinite examples of this. How many peace treaties and how many promises have had no effect and in vain has been made in vain. Okay, promises that are made for no reason, they're never going to be kept, or things like this. He says that these examples are infinite, have been no effect and made vain by their infidelity of princes who have not kept their promises, not kept their word, kept their obligations. And it's not only the people who are ungrateful infidels. The princes are people too. So this is the point that we should take a hold. And he says, and therefore, and those who have known how best to use the fox have turned out best. But it is necessary, this is the next sentence right there, is necessary to this nature to know how to color it, and to be a great hypocrite and deceiver, and to be a great hypocrite and deceiver. And men are so simple and obedient to present necessity that he who deceives will always find one who will let himself be deceived. Again, this is an interesting line. He says, it is necessary to this nature to know how to color it, how to color, present, or show it, mask it. I don't know. To color it. This is an expression they use. And to be a great hypocrite and deceiver. And he says, men are so simple and so obedient to present necessity. In other words, they care about the now. They care so much caring about the necessity of the moment, they forget about what happened in the past. Okay, that they deceive, and that he who deceives will always find one who would let him be deceived. This is how the third paragraph ends. You always sucker. That famous line: "A sucker born is every minute." Right. In other words, men are such that because they're so much tied to necessity in the moment and pay attention to the moment, they don't always pay attention. They don't, and they're blinded by the necessity of the moment, that they don't always pay attention to enough to the past and to the or even specific attention to other actors, so that they may not realize that you lied to other people with the situation of what you've done in the past. So therefore, if you're able to color your actions in a certain way, people may not recognize that you have broken your word, and you can color yourself faithful, or someone and people will believe you if you're deceiving them. So therefore, there's a kind of idea that the actors who lived by fraud, the fox living by fraud, turned out best so far, right? This is the thing. Now, if that is the third paragraph, now we go to the fourth. I do not wish to be silent about one of these recent examples. Remember, there's infinite examples of bad faith. Alexander VI, the Pope, the worship, right, never did anything else, and he never thought about anything else but how to deceive men, comma, and he always found a subject for his practice, period. The Pope, who is supposed to be about faithfulness, is presented here by Machiavelli as the greatest example of the fox. Think about it. This is Machiavelli shocking this. He wants to shock you. He's putting the Pope forward as the great deceiver. Now, wait a minute. Is he saying that the Pope, the church, religion is? No, this is one thing. Is he saying here by doing this that all religion is phony and this is all deception? No. He's trying to make a point here. It's about the ability to get, this ability to. It's about the power, the ability of this. Let's continue to think about this for a second. People's belief. If you can manipulate people's belief, you're able to deceive them. If you're able to use their belief to help get what you want, that's a form of deception. This is the fox, not the lion. Lion is going to do it by force. We have to understand, the lion is not here about integrity, I don't think. The lion here is more the force, the powerful, brave, forceful creature. But and he's the one who can terrify the wolves. It's the fox is the cunning one who can escape traps and escape and to kind of deceive men, to escape the traps and to get around the minds and the brains of men. Remember, he said about it earlier. So therefore, what we have to do here is that you have to think about it for a second. So Alexander always was able not only to how to deceive men, he never thought about anything else but how to deceive men, and he always found a subject for his praise. Next sentence. And there was never a man who was more efficacious, which means effective, and it's a kind of combination of effective and using of it. Efficacious. I'm losing my English over being 20 years away from an English audience. This is about what? This is a very old word. It's a very particular word. It means the effectiveness, and it's not only about the action, but it's about the character of the actor, of the action itself. And these two words are very difficult. The officiatious in asseverating. Now, okay, which means that word asseverating is it's about the solemn or emphatic declaration or a statement of something. In other words, you're proclaiming something or asserting it kind of in a emphatic sense, like a preacher, right? Would someone like someone who's promoting something, selling it, heavily selling it. Well, this is what Machiavelli is kind of hinting at about the Julius in that sense. Julius is one who is able to kind of make it solemn and professing to this at the sense, or with greater oaths. In other words, or with greater oaths affirm the thing. So what he's saying about he's never a man who was more effective in presenting a statement in a solemn sense, of swearing it in, or then took or made or with greater oaths, affirming a thing, comma, who less observed his faith. In faith is the bracket. It's kind of like an end, how it ends in Italian. So who less observed these things, who was less observant, in other words, remember the story about Alexander. Alexander had he had children. He had several children, and then he kept on having. He was a priest who had. It was a wife, yeah. And then he had took another wife. Okay, he had another. He placed the mother of his children with another mistress, and he was living openly in Rome like this. In other words, not just. So therefore, this is a man who can, and to question that he used was known for his money and his an ambition of trying to promote his son as he was pope. Okay, promoting his son Cesare. So this is a man who clearly, but at the same time he's the one who's going to take the most solemn sense. So not only is he's saying is this a person who will do anything to deceive men, but he's also able to present. He will swear and do things as in a way, but and not observe. Right? He says, nevertheless, his deceptions always succeeded at his will, because he knew so well this part of the world. In other words, this part of the world of the deception, but the things of the fox, things of deception, the things of this world. The belief, and this is tied to belief as well, on how people believe, and why does maybe there's something about belief and. Well, this is the story about belief. Right? Belief is not known. It's not. We don't know. Belief, in one sense, is an opinion. It's our kind of guess or assessment. We don't really know the thing. Belief is that we have not experienced it firsthand, but someone else might have told it, or we've been promised it, and something has promised us this, and our faith in the promise leads us to believe it's going to happen, right? And this is the point. That, in other words, belief is the thing. And belief and faithfulness and belief are very much intertwined. Because what happened now, reasoning, knowing is what? It's not just belief anymore. It's what? It's testing belief to truth. To know whether the belief is valid or not. Is it valid? Remember the famous, and then earlier, back earlier, he said back at 15, he talks about the ineffectual truths and the effectual truths. But it's truths. In other words, we're concerned with truths, not belief. In this sense, that therefore whereas Alexander who knows this realm of belief. And with belief comes hope, right? Hope, believe, faith. Now we looked at the next paragraph, paragraph 6. It is not necessary, comma, then, for a prince to have in fact all of the qualities written above. In other words, remember all the way back in but it is indeed necessary to appear to have them, period. I shall rather dare to say this, colon, that having them and observing them always, the integrity, remember those things he said above, right above here, right at the beginning of this. In other words, have faith and integrity, right? And not be perceived as another cunning, okay? In other words, he says, I dare say, and that having them and observing them always, they are harmful. But in appearing to have them, they are useful. So as to appear to be full of pity, faithful, human, open, religious, and to be so, but with one's mind constructed in such a mode that when the need not to be arises, you can and know how to change to the contrary. So again, we have that. Remember this. What is this? To be full of pity, faithful, human, open, religious. These are the kind of the virtues all the way back at 15. Remember those two lists of 11. Of that he gives here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, right? The 5. He says you should appear to have them, but if you're going to have them, if you have them, well, what you should know how to go. You have to be, if the time requires it, you have to know how to be the opposite. You need how to be the contrary. But with the mind, one's mind, constructed in such a mode that when the need not to be arises, you can, and know how to change to the contrary. Okay, you need to know how to the opposite of those. You need to go to the opposite of those. What are the opposite of those? Of cunning, faithless, bestial. What is the opposite of open? Open was cunning. Okay, so the opposite of here would be. Let's go back to that list at 15. So the first thing is pity. So pity was cruel. Opposite of pity is cruel and full of pity. Right. This is the third one. Faithful. Faithful is 4 and faithless. Then the next is human. Where's human? Human. Humane, proud. Oh, sorry. And then what is it? The next human would be probably again beast, right? Here we talked about it, right? But it's not part of the list. Human is it's proud. So it's the proud. To the original list is proud, but here human is applied to beast, right? Beast and human. So in this context, the original reference would be not to the proud, but would be just the opposite of it would be proud, right? Open would be tied with cunning, religious, In fact, this is, I'm not even sure religious is on the original list, is it? I don't think so. I think faithless versus faithless, full of pity. I do not see religious. No, yes it is. The 11th, religious and skeptical, right? That's right. The skeptical. So therefore, this leads us to the kind of pairings. Just go back. So it's interesting. The middle one, B, which the middle one is here. What the middle case here is human, and there's two possibilities. The possibility of the original, which is pride, but pride doesn't make sense here. Rather, the discussion of the chapter would focus on the beast. The opposite of it is. So that is an interesting kind of trick that he did in that sense here. So what happens? Know how to be the contrary, right? And he says, and this has to be understood, that a prince, especially a new prince, cannot observe all these things in which men are held to be good, for they are often necessitated to work against faith, against charity, against humanity, against religion, in order to maintain the state. So therefore, it's faith, charity, humanity, and religion. It's interesting. Charity replaces, in other words, but it's interesting. It's faith and charity. So what is charity? Charity would be something else. So in other words, he's not saying, he says it's necessary to work against faith. Okay, faithful, the second one, against charity. But wait a minute, charity was not a thing that we talked about here, unless he means pity. And therefore, he's flipped pity and faithfulness around, right? He flipped those around. But he didn't, because it's something else. Therefore, the second becomes the first. The new one, second, is not even on the list. And then against humanity, which was the middle. And then religion, which was the last, and open disappears, right? In order to maintain the state. In other words, you have to do these four things. So the 5 become 4. And of the 4, the second is not really part of the list, and it's charity. Again, that brings us back to the discussion of liberality, right? Liberality and charity are connected. Therefore, you shouldn't be liberal because that could destroy the state. So therefore, he I think he brings charity in here to reinforce what he said 2 chapters ago. Now, then what? And then he goes, in order to maintain the state, again, this is how he ends it, right? In the next paragraph, he goes, and therefore, if it's needful that he have a mind so disposed that he can turn as the winds of fortune and the variations of things command him, semicolon, and, comma, as been said above, comma, not to depart from the good, if he is able, but know how to enter the bad when necessitated to do. In other words, it's not that you want to be bad, you choose to be bad for bad being bad sake. Bad boy, you want to be a bad boy. No, you are bad or do these bad things because it's this. You do them because you're forced to by necessity in order to maintain the second sentence above, the sentence that came before it, right? That you do these things. Why? And that is that you did it for the sake of maintaining the state. So you know how to do that. In other words, you should be good. You should not depart from that if you're able. If you can be good, that's I think you should try to be. If it's not going to cost you the state, or just cause you ills that will bring destruction of the state. But in order to save the state, you need to know how to be bad. Okay. Now this leads us to the last paragraph of this chapter, and we were already an hour over. So oh my God, we talked about for a long time here. A prince then ought to take great care that nothing goes out of his mouth which is not full of the 5 qualities written above. Again, that goes back to the 5 qualities, which they were faith, pity, faithfulness, humanity, openness, and religion, right? And he says, nothing goes out of his mouth that is not full of the 5 qualities written above, and what he appears to be when one sees and hears him, all pity, all faith, all integrity, all humanity, all religion, period. Okay, next sentence. Nothing is more necessary than to have this last quality. The last quality. Nothing is more necessary than to have this last quality, period. For men universally judge more by the eyes than by the hands, because it is given to everyone that they see, but the few that they can touch. Now, the Alvarez has a footnote here. This footnote is 5. This is a discussion about the passage in the introduction. This is about the seeing and touching problem. He makes reference in the book about the famous case of Emile. And Emile, the tutor, shows the boy the stick in the water. The stick in the water looks bent, but when you pull the stick out, it's not bent. Why? Because the visual sense is the most deceptive. It's the most complex of the 5 senses. Touch, smell, hearing, smelling, and seeing. Seeing is most complex. It is the most complex. But it's the most deceptive. The most subject to being deceived. Like I say this every time I teach a class. When I talk about this question, do your fingers like this and look at your middle finger. Look between your finger and you see a little sausage. Is there really a little sausage there? Because what happens? The illusion. Anything, because of sight, we can have illusion. And this is why sight is at the most complex. In other words, the famous thing, it allows for complex. A picture is worth 1,000 words. By mere picture, you can say more than 1,000 words. Lots with a picture. Mathematical equations, the images of them, those short mathematical shorthands and shorthands, are able, by images and symbols, you are able to communicate more than you could normally do with the words. Words itself. Words, the written language is a kind of symbolism of the spoken language. So therefore, our words, signs can have, images can have more complex reality than our ability to speak it. But the problem with, at the same time, it's also a very easy to deceive it, like the stick in the water. The stick in the water looks deceptive. Now, his point here is the many rely on the truth through their eyes. But this is the sense that can be easily deceived. Okay? The sense that can't be deceived, the simplest sense, touch. Touch is for the few. Think of this. Can everyone touch you? Only your intimate people can touch you. You can touch yourself, and other people can touch you. But we allow few people to touch us. The many can see us, but few touch. And this is his point. He says what? Since for men universally judge more by the eyes than by the hands, because it is given to everyone that they see, but few that they can touch. Everyone sees what you seem to be, but few touch what you are. And those few will not dare oppose themselves to the opinions of the many, who have the majesty of the state defending them. In other words, this is more thing. He leads this thing, that the few and the many, right? The opinion of the many. The few are going to be afraid of the many. They're few and they're many. That's one way. But the few who can touch are opposed to the beliefs and the opinion, the beliefs that based on their sight, the belief based on their sight of what they what they believe seems to be true, because their eyes seem to represent it, and therefore they believe it because they see it. Seeing is believing, right? But sight is deceptive, whereas touch isn't. Few touch, but the thing is that the deception between the difference between the thing that is touched and known versus the thing seen that is wrong, you're being deceived about. The problem is the many believe that they're right. The few who know they're not are a minority, and they're a very small minority. And what's going to happen? It's even worse when the prince, who they're at the issue, the thing that they know, is able to do what? The majesty of the state helps the people to defend the people, and therefore the people depend upon the prince and the state, and therefore what happens is, well, wait a minute, they're going to believe that they want to believe what they see. They want to believe what they see about the prince, about the man or the political actor, and they'll believe what they see. And then, and you telling them, oh no, that's not it. You're the few, and you'll get crushed. And this is the whole line about it, right? And in other words, it says what? And everyone sees what you seem to be, and few touch who you are. And those few will not dare oppose themselves to the opinion of the many who have the majesty of the state defending them. And with respect to all human actions, especially those of princes, where there is no judge to whom to appeal, one looks to the end. In other words, all human actions where there's no judge to appeal, you look to the end, right? To the end. One looks to the end. This is what is this about? What is the goal? What is the purpose? There is no judge to whom to appeal. So, and therefore, when you're talking about human actions, and especially those of princes, there's no judge to whom to appeal. One looks to the end. That's that line. It's a very odd way to end it, but that's the idea. Is the end is what is the end here? The end is okay. Do you really want to get in trouble? I mean, do you want? You know the truth. Do you really need to tell everyone the truth? So therefore, here's the next line here, and it says what? Let a prince then win and maintain the state, / with the means will always be judged honorable, and will be praised. In other words, again, by everyone. For the vulgar are always taken in by the appearance and the outcome of a thing. And in this world, there is no one but the vulgar. Now, this is interesting. The end is you should pay attention to the end. What is the end? The end is the goal you want. The goal. The end. What is the purpose or end or goal of a thing? The end here is that what? You given this idea, there'll be, in other words, reflect, in other words, in respect to human actions, and especially those of prince, there's no judge to whom to appeal. One looks to the end. He looks always to the end of a thing. And the reason is the means you take, the means are going to vary. The means are going to vary. And therefore, the means that brings you to the end, the goal, the means that deliver you to goal, right? This will always be, he says, honorable. Why? It will always be judged honorable and be praised by everyone because why? The vulgar are always taken in by the appearances. They'll not judge the means on their own. They'll judge it in regards to the end, it makes sense. There is truth to that. Does the end actually deliver the means you promised? Therefore, the point here is even more interesting. That the thing about here is that everyone is appearing. In other words, it makes it as in this world there's no one but the vulgar. The vulgar, the people who their understanding of things they judge the world by their eyes, by their belief. Next sentence. And the few have no place, where the many have a great number of places upon which they may perch. So in other words, the few have no place here, and that's this footnote here. This is one could imagine a bird coop where the rare and exotic birds are crowded off the perches. Okay, This is the image of the bird coop, right there, where the vulgar birds are everywhere, and the rare birds have nowhere to find a place to do something. A certain present-day prince, who it's not good to name, never preaches anything but peace and faith, and is the greatest enemy of the one and the other, and the one as well as the other. If he had observed them, would many have times taken from him either his reputation or his state. Now here he's referring to Ferdinand of Spain, again in chapter 21. Particularly see chapter 21 later when we talk about this. Ferdinand will lose his, in other words, if he was actually faithful in all these things, he would have lost it. So therefore, he appears to be all faithful, all these things. No. And if he really was, he would have lost his, in other words, he had many times taken from him either his reputation or the state. So in other words, he has the reputation of being good, and he has the control of the state. And what he does is he relies on the fact that few, and isn't this the Inquisition, the Spanish Inquisition? We think the Inquisition is about church. No, it's about him keeping control. He uses the church as an instrument of control, Ferdinand does in Spain. The Inquisition was, first and foremost, more a political move to centralize power to him and to use the church as a weapon against the forces that we thought was a threat to him. Okay, this is it. We're over. We took a lot of time. We're a little long. In fact, next chapter we read 19 will be very bad because it's the longest chapter of the Prince. If you like this, please give a thumbs up and share it with a friend. If you want to know, see more of these things, please subscribe and recommend it to others. If you have any comments about what we've talked about today, please put it below, comment, or you can follow me on social media. And again, the link is also a link below to the publisher about Dial versus book if you want to know more about the book, the translation that we're using. Again, have a nice day. Take care. Bye-bye.